So I didn't get the detail memo. So mine is much shorter, which might be a good thing, not saying better. Just wanted to start with an observation. Fiction, which I love deeply, to me is a way of transporting and moving through reality, which is always messy and complicated and sometimes ununderstandable. But in fiction, the world creates a kind of order, and that kind of order tells us truth that we can't reach any other way, which is why I think people who love literature, that's why they love literature, because it takes the world and makes it, even if it's momentarily, it makes it understandable. And Singer's stories, which is what I'm talking about in the class that many of you took with me, is a very certain place in our world. He is a transmitting and a transporting figure that takes us, for the Ashkenazi Jew, from the experience in Europe to the experience in America. And if you're of my generation or even a little bit younger, many of our parents came from Europe and lived that transition. And so for me, it made things understandable about particularly my father, who was born in Europe and came to America, and it helped me understand that transition. So that was the personal level that these stories work for, because too often the world that he left behind is so ununderstandable for most of us. The density of it, the complexity of it, and the scariness of it, because it was definitely a scary world that America is not. And the Golden Medina, which is what they called America, is truly the Golden Medina, particularly for those who came after. So that's a little framework for this. So why did I love the Singer stories when I made a list? I have 5 points. Everybody else do it. First of all, I thought, and still think, that there's a magic in doing this with Rabbi Kanter, because she brings alive the elements of the story that, just as Haley said, I would have never seen. You think you're reading the same thing, and then you read it again and say, okay, I didn't see that. Okay, I didn't see that. So that's magic. And we looked at and read about characters' actions and reactions through the text-driven look at the text and at the stories rather, so that embedded into the story is references that bring depth and understanding that I would not have seen had it not been for what was pointed out and what we discussed as a group. So that was the first thing. So those characters came alive. Then he uses both Yiddish and Hebrew to name his characters. And all of a sudden, there's dimension that you didn't think about. What does Gimel mean? And why is Gimel a fool? And is Gimel a fool? It's on a whole new meaning when you examine the name of the character. I love the fact that he mixes together in his tone irony and humor and memory, all of which in that mix create a whole new balance for the story and the way the story unfolds for you, the language of the speakers, and even what sort of floats above the story, which is memory, because most of what he's dealing with is memory. He's in America writing, yes, in Yiddish, which is his inspiration, I think, as well as his language, but he's also writing about what doesn't exist anymore, and there's a poignancy in that. I loved his examination of the Eastern European experience, not like Disneyland, which is what we too often see in pictures, with happy Hasidic men dancing with their payas flapping in the air. But that wasn't what Europe was like, and certainly wasn't from either my grandmother or my father's stories. So the texture and almost the smell of Europe comes to us, and it's not a sweet smell. It's a smell mixed with lots and lots of unpleasant odors. And then I think for me, as I said earlier, my father came from a shtetl, and for me to get some inkling of what he saw in Europe and what he brought with him to America and never left culturally, because lots of my father was living in America but still really in Europe, really became clear to me not before, because I've read Singer many times before, but in these classes, because it was a look at a world that I understood more deeply because of all the attributes that came clear in the storytelling. So like everybody else, we are very grateful to have Rabbi Kanter be our teacher and our guide. And I am also very grateful, like several people have said, for the wonderful people who sit around the table with us, because studying with these people is such a machaya that it's hard to even articulate to somebody who doesn't know how wonderful it is to see and hear, first of all, to see the expressions of interest and excitement on people's faces, and then secondly, to hear comments I would have never thought of that are so interesting and bring such depth and insight to the story, so that together it's larger than, as they say, the sum of the parts, and it's a wonderful thing to study. So thank you all.